Greetings and welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel, where we are making some scribes for bone carving. Now this is a continuation of an earlier project. The last video I put up on the channel was making this bone handled knife, and I want to do a bit of incised carving work on this handle. Now I've done quite a bit of work with bone, carving bone, making bone tools, carving, some fancy carving fish hooks and stuff like that. But that's all just carving the round shape, right? The bulk shape. I don't have the toolkit that I need to do a lot of detailed incised work in this hard of a medium. Wood, yes. Done a lot of that in wood, but not as much in something as hard as bone. So when you need a tool, you make a tool. So we're working on a set of scribes for this purpose. I will make sure that I put a link to that handle video up here at the top of the screen for any that want to start at the absolute beginning of the project and work all the way through. But these scribes, basic set of 3, we have a triangular scribe, okay, that can also be used as a little reamer. We have a V tool, okay, for gouging a line. Okay, gouging down, cutting down. You always want to be able to cut a V when you're doing any kind of relief carving. Okay, so we have a V tool. Also, the side edges of this work great as a scraper. Same for our triangular scribe. And thirdly, we have a standard awl, okay, which can be used, with a pencil grip for scratching for scrimshaw work, and it can also be used for stippling because it has this really nice natural saddle in it. Okay, which was modified a little bit. Now these first two, just grab the triangle scribe, are made from the cannon bone of a deer, where the cavity that is not filled by the tool is filled up with more bone. Okay, so we'll walk in detail through all the steps of making these because this is the more complex set. Okay, we will also at the end discuss briefly the strategy and process for making this. This is very simple. This is about a half hour. These are not one-day builds. This is a 1-hour build. Okay, so most of the time in the video is on making the other two. There is a fourth that I intend to make before carving the bone handle, and that's a straight chisel. But that will be made in exactly the same ways as these, and I need to put a period on the video somewhere and get it out to you. So I'm just going to do that fourth tool off camera. Now, all of these are made from files. So these triangle tools are made from a triangle file that I sacrificed, and this is made from a chainsaw file. Okay. I've said in other videos in my blacksmithing series and recycle how to recycle steels, what steels I like to use, that I hate using files as feedstock for blacksmithing forge work. Okay. When we talk about cutting files, you're going to see why. But for this project, where we just have a very short tool, very small tool, all of the teeth are being ground off, okay? And I'm not doing any forging. I'm not even altering the temper on the file. I'm leaving it just super hard because I want these to be scribes for work in a hard, resistant material. It's great for that, okay? So this is one of the ways that I will recycle files. And these old, saw sharpening files, these show up at yard sales all the time. Okay? One last thing I wanted to mention before digging into this project is just to give credit where it's due. These two tools in particular were inspired by the videos on the Stockman Original's YouTube channel. So he is an expert bone carver, far better and more experienced at this type of detail work than I am. And when I was setting out to design these tools, his videos were very, very key for me to look how he's using tools, look what he's doing, and choose the ones that would be the best starter kit for this particular project that I have in mind. So go check out his stuff. There's one video in particular on his channel where he shows all of his tools, and I'll put a link to that in the description box if you want to go and see his stuff. So I just wanted to give him a thank you and a little bit of a shout out. Now, if you're interested, let's dig in and work on this project. let's talk about making some of these scrimshaw and bone carving tools. Now, I've done a fair bit of bone carving on this channel already, okay, but I haven't done a lot of incised bone carving, and that's because I've been waiting to make these sets of tools to do it right. Whenever you're starting into a new activity, a new skill or a new variation of a skill, and you're looking at your tool set, think through it logically so that you don't go overboard getting it or making a bunch of stuff that you're never going to use. Okay? And the way you do that is by, watching and paying attention to other people that are doing it. Make sure you're paying attention to people that are doing it in the way that you're going to. If you're watching a channel that's sponsored by a tool company and just wants to use every one of their tools in a video, that's not giving you an honest answer about how, you should work. Right? When I'm looking at this and thinking, what tools do I want to make? I've paid attention to, the tools that a couple other folks have used. Stockman Originals is a really good channel that does a bunch of scrimshaw and bone carving work. I'll put a link to that in the description box. And he has a couple of tutorials where he's talked about all of his toolkit. And I've done a lot of incised work in wood carving, so I kind of know what processes there are. And I've done work in bone carving, so I know how bone reacts to tools differently from wood. So I've set out, and there are just a couple of tools that I want to start with that I think will get done everything I need to get done. The first three are going to be a graving tool, a V-bottom graving tool for starting a deep cut, and then I want to make a triangular scribe, very much like Stockman Original's triangular scribe. That's where I got the idea for this tool, give credit where it's due. And I'm going to make a needle tool, like a needle, a stippling tool for a tool equivalent to a sail needle and a handle, although I'm going to make it round rather than a triangular shape like a sail needle would be. That's going to be designed to stipple or to be used as a scratch tool. Those are the first three. I'm also thinking about, for an extension of that toolkit, some flat chisels and round bottom scrapers for potentially removing material in those ways. But that will be more down the line. These first three are a lot more basic. So I'm going to focus on the first three first. And I'll talk to you about how I'm going to make these three tools. And then others may show up as I need to make them. As you need a tool, you make a tool, right? And once you get the ability to make tools, when you need a tool, you make a tool. And it's very, very nice like that. Now, I'm going to make these from some files. Years and years ago at a yard sale, I picked up just a dealer's box of these triangular files for like nothing. I got like a couple hundred of these for 30, 40 bucks, right, for nothing. So I'm going to sacrifice two for this little project. For my handles, I'm going to use, and I've already kind of started tinkering with one of these. This is cannon bone from a deer, okay? And this is a really nice natural ergonomic shape that fits well in your palm and makes for a good push tool, okay? They're also hollow, so it's easy to insert something into there. These in their original form look like this. This one was very, very mineral stained. I'll often, when I get a deer, when I'm working with it, if I don't have time to clean up all the bones, I'll just bury them in a pot of soil, and then they'll come up a little bit mineral stained. But that's okay. That's just character. This is a character project anyway. So to get from here to here is just a bit of file work, right? I'm not going to demonstrate all that. It's a farrier's rasp, just taking down all of these nubs. Because while it's a nice natural ergonomic shape, if you imagine pushing those into your hand, those are blisters waiting to happen, okay? So file off the blisters waiting to happen. You will get into a little bit of marrow, a little bit of pithy stuff in there. You can see a couple pockets of it here, here, there, little pocket there. We will fill those up with wax before all is said and done, okay? So they won't be absorbing sweat when you're using them. So that's not a problem. There's still plenty of good durable bone. Now, the structure of the cannon bone, you can kind of see it here. This groove is actually a suture between two fused leg bones. In the evolution of the deer, you had two, a deer is kind of walking up on its toes, right? So these are bones from in the hand back in here that are fused together, and then the upper hand is the third joint in the deer's leg, and the deer's foot is the front finger bones. Okay, so this bone is these two bones fused together. Okay, in the evolution of the deer, or so I'm not sure exactly which ones it is. Hand bones fused together. Moving on. So you have the suture line where that fusion took place. Okay, and if we go and we probe inside of this a little bit, it looks like a straight hollow. But if I go in with a narrow tool and feel around, if I go in at an angle, I can get in deeper than if I go in straight. Okay? Because right here, there's a little septum. Right where that comes in. So the hollow goes here, hits a septum, and then splits off into a Y. Okay? With a blockage in the middle, and you can see where that, sinew attachment was. And that septum is supporting that attachment. Okay? So if we go in and we feel around and we find the top of that septum, that's our depth. And I want to put my file in all the way to that septum, so I have a good seat and good even pressure. Bone is brittle. If you're to put this in and then reef on it, you could absolutely split this bone. So I want my scribe or my tool or whatever I'm making to be supported in this whole interior. So there's not a single pressure point where you're prying out. So we do that, we mark that, and then I gave myself an extra 1.5 inches in order to have a cut mark on this file. And here's how we cut a file. We put that in a vise at that mark. Is this showing up well, beloved?
Oh, no.
Okay. And then we just push on it. And it snaps with a conchoidal fracture, just that easy. Okay? That's how we cut a file. This is why I so passionately hate the idea of taking files and using them to make knives. It's brittle material. A lot of that brittleness, some of that brittleness is coming from the temper, that this is ultra hard in its temper, but also a lot of that brittleness is coming from the fact that in the process of making the file, these teeth are stamped in with concussive force. Okay? So each one of those teeth has a stress fracture in the bottom. So you have pre-fractured brittle material. In order to use it to make anything, you have to grind off the file marks. Okay? That is the first step. I'm going to go do that. We also have to be aware of our sizes. So this is ever so slightly too big for the fat section to go into that bone. So I will take these corners off. I will take these corners off so it can fit, and I will grind the flats on a power grinder. Back here, I don't care if it builds a little bit of heat, but when I'm working out toward the tip, I do not want to lose this ultra hard temper because this is what's going to make it good for a scribe. Okay? So we're going to remove all of the file teeth and thus the pre-existing cracks. We're going to support it, and we're only going to have a little bit of tool protruding from the handle. And that's why it can hold up in this situation when it wouldn't hold up well in other situations. To do that, you cannot get away with hogging off material quickly. You have to go very slow and very gentle with your grinder. And you always want to have a finger up here. So, if you pretend this is the grinding wheel, and you're working it across the grinding wheel, as soon as you feel warm, you need to dunk it in some water. Okay? If you keep your finger here, it will burn your finger before it will ruin the temper of the file itself. Back here, I don't care. This conchoidal break fracture, if I need to remove some material from that, yeah, there you can hog off a bit.
But when we get out to the tip where we're going to be making our actual tool point, no, you don't want to do that. So, be very, very careful with this. When we're choosing our bone for the handle, if I just, have two out here, you can see this one is a little smoother, but it's also got a crack right there. It's very common for these to crack in the drying process. Very, very common. Whereas this one, it's going to take a little bit more work. I'm going to file off all of that suture, that fold. But it's intact. So this one will make the better handle. Okay. So I'm going to clean up a second handle. I'm going to work on rough shaping these. But in this next clip, I'm going to show you a little snippet of me working carefully on the grinder. The sound will be off because that's just going to be a gosh awful clatter on the camera. But you'll see my hand motions, what I'm doing there. Real super quick progress update here. The two handles are roughed out formed, about the same length, and again the blades are about the same length here as well. If you look at them, there is the complete absence of file teeth anywhere that sticks out of the handle. Back here on the back there's still a few little scars, a little bit of those deep cracks in there that you can still see. I didn't grind all of those out because this is going to be so well supported by the handle it won't matter. But out here where it's going to protrude from the handle, absolutely they are all gone. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to pick up, if I hold something white against the back of it, I'm not sure how well this is going to pick up in the camera, but when I grind these to a point, I'm not grinding them all the way to a point. There's still a bluntness at the end. Okay, that final step is going to have to come off with water stones. If you try to use a power grinder to take this all the way to the finished edge, you will destroy it 10 out of 10 times. It's just not a good plan. Okay, and the same with here. We have a little bit of belly in it. Okay, we have approximately 45-degree cut, and no file marks anywhere sticks out of the handle. Now when I cut into this one, the septum was a lot further out. The septum comes out to about here, which is why I snapped a little bit more of that length off of it. Okay. Yeah, right there. So that blade is a little bit shorter, and this handle is, the opening in this one is quite a little bit larger. It's a larger bone. So they come in different sizes. This is normal. The next steps are to get out the whetstones and really shape these blades. And then once that's done, we are going to need to fill up all of the space in these pieces. So what we're going to do there is cut some thin strips of bone. We're going to glue those to the sides of the piece, and then we will file that down so that it fits nicely in and fills up this whole volume. Now you see this doesn't quite go all the way to the back. That's okay. I will fill in the back here. I only need bone where I might file into it when I shape the ends of these, because obviously they're not going to stay this blocky square profile. I wanted to show this fit up at two different stages of progress so you can get a good idea of how it's working. If we look at this V-tool, this is basically done. There's still something stopping it a little bit all the way at the back. I might just live with that. We'll see. But it's basically finished. So you can see it slides in there nice. There is a couple of little gaps here and there. but it's nice and an easy slide. This is what you want to get to. This is relatively difficult to do. This is not a quick and easy step. When you're doing something like this with wood, especially if it's been bored out to a constant diameter, you have a known diameter, you just need to shape your pin to that. When we're doing this in bone, and we have an irregular opening, right? Each of these is a slightly different, there's one more here that I'm tinkering with. Each of these is a slightly different shape. And that shape changes a little bit as you go down the bone. So you have to slowly and carefully test shape, test shape, test shape. And the bone has no give. If you're doing it with wood, the wood will compress a little bit before it splits. So you can get very, very close, put glue on, and then just give it a tap for that last little bit, and it'll sink right in. If you do that with bone, you will just blow this open, because these little tubes of bone are very, very brittle when you're pressing from the inside out. Okay, they really split very easily. So you have to be very careful as you go here. If you do it slowly and patiently and take your time, you can absolutely do it. But you have to be slow and patient, and it does take quite a bit of time, okay, to get an irregular bone tenon fitting in that sleeve. Now this one, I built a box all the way around, filed it down on the bottom, and let the top adjust. You see this little groove I have cut in the top. I'm not sure if it's going to show up on the camera, but there was a little protrusion, a little suture there. Okay. This one doesn't have that. Okay, completely different shape. It's fascinating how different each of these is from all of the others. You know, so each one's its own thing. This one I built a box around it and filed it down. Wrong one. Okay. This one, because this bone is approximately triangular on the inside, and I have a triangular tool here, I glued a strip to each of the facets. And then I will slowly, that's the top, and that's the top, hold it on, and slowly work down each of those strips until it fits on the inside. Okay. This first one is all the way finished, nice flush fit up, and I wanted to show, getting a little stuck there. It goes in and out easy, but only in one way. So if you twist it while you're pulling it, it can get stuck. Now, one thing I wanted to note here, if you look at this back, there's a little bit of a ramp there. Okay. So as I was working this in, it was getting stuck, but I could see it wasn't touching anywhere around the front. So I removed a little bit of material from the inside, found where the obstruction was, and filed that off. Okay, so these bones aren't necessarily straight all the way in, so you have to be a little careful of that. But this is what we want. This is a good fit up. Nice, flush at the end. Minimal gapping. You're always going to have a little bit of gapping when you have two materials that are completely uncompressible and an irregular fit up, right? If you're just drilling a hole and just making around tenon, yes, you can do that without gapping. You can't do this without a little gapping here and there. So don't judge yourself too harshly on that. But it slides in easily. You don't want to have to force it or you will split the bone out. And there's no wiggle. And that's important. There's absolutely no wiggle whatsoever. Because if this is wiggling when it's in there, then if you have, yes, the epoxy will fill gaps, right? But wiggle means trying to break it apart, okay? So if it can wiggle, it can put side pressure on the sleeve, and that will bust chips out of your sleeve. Yes, the epoxy can fill gaps and help with that, but we still want to minimize the problem to begin with. Good fit up. Now, I've taken a lot of material off of this one, and we're working on the fit up process. So I just wanted to show you a little bit how I'm doing this. First, part of I think the hardest part of doing one of these, tenon in a sleeve sorts of fit ups is getting the base of the tenon starting to fit initially. That can be really difficult. The flip side to that is it never shows. This part never shows. So if you carve a little too much off, no big deal. Nobody's ever going to see it. Okay? But you want to have it in. You want to have it straight and square. Okay? You want to make sure that you're inserting it straight and square. Slide it in till it touches. Do not force it. Okay? If you force it, either it's going to slip to one side or the other like it just did there, which hurts your ability to proceed from that point. Or if you force it way too much, it's going to split out the sleeve again. Okay? So this keeps wanting to slide a little on me. There. And you just push it in with finger pressure until it touches in the proper alignment without any more force than just my thumb and my forefinger sliding straight down. Okay? Then I'm going to look at the rim. And where the outer bone is not touching the inner tenon, I can see a dark shadow line. And where you have bone against bone touching, I don't see a shadow line. So right here, it's touching. Okay? So I'm going to take a pencil and just make a mark. Then I turn it around. Right here, it's touching. Okay? And right here, it's touching. Now notice I'm not extending those lines all the way out. I'm just working, a half inch or so at a time. Now we pull it out. You see how much progress we've gotten, right? That is all slipping in, and now we're working on this section. Then I will take a file and file off those pencil lines. Okay? I don't want to refile what's already going in well. And I don't want to get ahead of myself and file way out here where I'm just guessing. So, half inch or so at a time, file off the pencil lines. Okay? It's a little easier to do it this way, but I'm trying to do it so you can see it on the camera. And then we repeat. Slide it in. Make sure we have proper alignment. Because if you twist it and then do this, you'll be reinforcing that twist. Okay? You'll be setting your error permanently. Okay? There. Proper alignment. Then also look and see if it's tilted this way or this way. And if it's tilted up or down, wherever it's hitting is the opposite of what it's pointing towards, right? So if I'm holding it this way and it was tilted toward the bottom, it would mean it would be hitting on the top, and I'd take off a layer on the top. Okay? This is tilting a little bit that way, so I know I need to take some off the top there. And then I go around again, and I mark where it's touching. Okay? And you just keep doing this a little at a time, a little at a time, a little at a time. I probably had 2 or 3 hours in fitting that tenon. Okay? Don't rush. Don't force it. You force it, you split your piece. Now, as you're going, if you see a little check, you can reinforce it with a drop of thin super glue. But if you force this in and split out a major piece, you're starting over. And you're starting over completely because no two of these bones are even all that similar to each other, right? I have 3 that I'm working on. And you can see how different all of those openings are, okay? It's completely non-transferable. If you break the bone, you yes, you can still use your steel piece, but you're going to have to take the bone that you have on completely off, start over from scratch. And that's sad. We don't want to do that. Take it slow, do it right, do it careful, you'll get there. Here we are. I have filed this all down so that it slides in nicely. It has a little bit more play than this one. That came from the final cleanup. So after getting all of this done, to clean up the inside and get ready for the glue up as much as possible, I just took a little bit of sandpaper, rolled it up tight enough that I could get it inside, and used this little chainsaw file as a bit of a sanding block just to clean up and scuff up the inside a little bit. And then I, dribbled a little bit of acetone down in there and just kind of rolled it around as best I could to get a little bit of a wash. Not ideal, but the best I could do. It's just some things you can't clean up well. Do the best you can. But in the process, I lost a little bit of size, so it has a little wiggle. I wish that didn't, but it does. The epoxy will take that up just fine. This one, I also did the same cleanup step. It got a tiny bit of wiggle, but not bad. So we're ready for glue up. Now, in this case, I am going to use 30-minute epoxy because I need some set time. And I'm going to make 2 different little batches here. So the first, I'm going to mix the epoxy, okay, and then I am going to drag some of this bone dust in and make a paste, okay. This is just your basic seat of the pants filler, where you're mixing an adhesive with the material that you're filling. Okay? And that is going to go in the handle first. So I'm going to put a little bit of that right here around the stub. Okay. Take up some of that space. I'm going to scrape up as much of the rest as I can. We're just going to get that on the edge so it kind of coats as it goes down. If you need a little bit more, I will definitely need to make a little bit more of this when I do the other piece. Now, that's just going to help the stubby back end seat. Let's remember there's a little septum back in here. I just want the seat into that. Okay. Now for the main adhesive, we're going to mix this little puddle of epoxy with some titanium dioxide for the white coloration, because we want it to match our bone as close as possible. You can get this titanium dioxide powder from a number of places. You can get it from ceramic supplies, you can get it from art supplies. It's a pretty standard earth pigment. Of course, if you were going to use it to paint a pretty picture, you'd be Muellering it. Grind it nice. For this, I just want it to make my epoxy approximately white, so I'm not bothering to do those things. I'll get this all smeared up with the epoxy. We want good wetting across this whole surface. Okay. There it is. Now we're just going to carefully seat one into the other.
They can't see that
Well,
from your hands.
is what it is. I have to be able to see it.
Yeah.
Make a little bit. Make sure it seats in nice. If as we carve this we get into any voids here at the end, it can happen. We can always come back and fill them a little bit. Hopefully it will be nice and solid. Now, when you're doing this, and I know you can't see everything, but I have to see. Okay, make sure everything is right and tight and square. Once you're sure it's right and tight and square, then you set it aside. You don't touch it. You don't touch it until it's hard. Now, this one will be the same. I'm going to make a slightly bigger glue ball because I want this putty all the way around the back of this piece. Okay, I'm going to do that off camera, and then we'll talk a little bit about the final shaping. Little bit of an update. These are all basically finished except for the final carving and shaping. I wanted to talk about that for a minute. First, I want to remind everybody, square, octagon, round. The universal rule when you're carving round things. Okay, you carve in the square because your eye can see a fair line most easily when it has an angle to focus on. Then you go and you octagonalize your square shape, and then you do the final rounding. And if you take those steps, you will always end up with nice, even, good-looking, fair curves. So for this one is, sort of a V-gouge, basically, right? It's a jeweler's modified concept jeweler's lozenge V-gouge. So this will be used most in this fashion, okay? It's my hand holding it like that and plowing out, and I can just do it here in the wood, right? Plowing out a V, like so, okay? It will also be used with these edges as a scraping tool, just like that, okay? So when I'm shaping this, I'm focusing on ergonomics and holding it, putting my finger where it will be when I'm actually carving with the tool and saying what feels good and what needs to change. Okay, and I'm doing that in square section. And this is pretty much where I want it. That has a very nice feel to it. There's a little bit of a lump right where the bone transitions to the blade. And I'm going to do a little bit more rounding on that because square edges equal hot spots after hours of work. Okay, that's basically that. This one, our triangular piece, first of all, I did prove that it's sharp in the most regrettable fashion possible, but it is sharp.
Poor honey.
This can be used a little bit to make a hole as a reamer like that with a palm grip, okay? But its most frequent use will be with a pen grip scribing lines, okay? So when I shape this handle, instead of the long ramp I used on here, which for a push tool, it's a much shorter ramp just to round it off and make it look nice. And my focus is on the pinch grip. Okay, so I filed in a little bit, with the half round, filing in here working like that. And I did want to show you the octagonalization. So this is mostly octagonalized here around the finger grip. And then you can try it and you can see, yes, it works. The other way you'll use this is, again, as a scraper, like that. And when I hold it again, this finger sits right into that finger groove. Okay? So that will work nice when I'm using it as a scraper. Okay? So those are those two. They're just going to get rounded off. And then I made a third, and I did all of this off camera because it's pretty self-explanatory. This is just a round awl, okay, a round scratch awl. So I made this out of a bit of a antler piece, okay, and some modifications I made on it. One of the ways that you use a straight awl in Scrimshaw is as a stippling tool. Okay, and it's very handy. You want a big swell, and it's very handy if you have a little bit of a saddle to put your finger in for when you're stippling. Okay, it's obviously not glued in yet. So I did a little bit of work here with this little half-round small file. Okay, just until it felt good for doing that, and I completely rounded off the burr that was here. Now, a lot of bone carving, like especially belt buckles and knives and stuff, knife handles, when they're made out of antler, like the aesthetics of the burr. And I don't disagree with that. The burr is a beautiful piece to work with if it works to do so. But when I'm going to be in primary use of this thing, holding it here and, doodling, I need that to be a comfortable grip. Mm-hmm. The burr is not a comfortable grip. Okay, so ergonomics first, decoration second. And I quite love the challenge of these things, of trying to think up a way to decorate them that completely conforms to the pre-existing ergonomic decisions. It's just a mental challenge for me, so I like that. So this is made the same as those. It is a piece of chainsaw file. Okay, yeah, that's the chainsaw file that I broke off. You can see the little conchoidal fracture from breaking it there. Okay, just put it in a vise and pulled it off. Round it off, ground all of the file teeth everywhere that it sticks out of the handle. I did leave a little bit of the file tooth here in the back where it's going to get epoxied in just for grip. And if you look at it, I filed a flat here. Get that out of the way. Filed a flat here and a flat here. So you can kind of see it tapers in a little bit. That's just to keep it from spinning. Because for one of this sort of tool, when it's just epoxied straight in, the dominant way that's going to end up breaking that glue bond is if it rotates and spins and breaks that glue bond. So having those flats will help it not spin, just act like a little bit of a key. And then this is just drilled in with a drill bit. So doing all of this, making this entire tool, took less time than just making one of these blades and gluing on the spacer pieces, to say nothing of the whole fit up, right? So this was, making this little guy was all in like a half-hour project, so I just did it. Okay, so there's my basic set. This needs glued up, and some of the little facets and ridges sanded off better here. These need fully rounded, and then we'll look at some finished tools. So let's look at our tools. But before we do, I just wanted to mention that this YouTube channel is unmonetized and unsponsored. That lets me be completely free and open and honest and share all of this information without any conflicts of interest. But doing projects like this, it does take materials, it does take resources. And if you would like to help support us, we have a Patreon. The link is in the description box. And also, if you want to wander over there, there are a ton of resources in the digital store. All of those can just be purchased if you just want to buy one. But if you join the Patreon at any of the paid levels, even the $1 a month, you get access, full, free, unlimited access to all of that information. So I hope that I see you there, but either way, I'm glad to see you here. So let's look at these. Here's our scribe, and it fits really nice for, a pencil hold. Okay. Works really well for that, and I just opened up this with the file here until it fit my finger well. So that's for the stippling action. Okay, works nice. The V tool, filed down here again just until it was comfortable for my finger. And I took a bit of sandpaper just on my thumb, like the edge of my thumb, and sandwiched a little bit of a concavity. You won't see it. You can't even really see the concavity well when you're looking at it up close, but you can feel it with your fingertip. It just helps with indexing. You can just feel that tiny, tiny bit of a concavity. And this works nicely for, just doing it in wood here. You can see that nice little shaving that it's raising. Okay? But also, we have this side edge, and that works great as a scraper. Okay? So, I'm not going to incise a line on this nice piece, but I know this is going to get rounded off more. There's our scraper. And then this, carved to fit nicely with a pencil hold for scribing lines. Okay. It can be used as a reamer for making a small hole or an indentation. And again, just like the other, all of these side edges are sharpened enough that they can be used as a scraper, just like so. So that's 3 very nice starting tools. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you've learned from it and got a few ideas. And I hope that you will start thinking about this idea of need a tool, make a tool. It's not as hard as a lot of people think to make really, really good tools. And these sorts of tools are things that are made for you, made for your body, made for your grip, made for your comfort, made for your ergonomics. You can't buy something like this at any price, and to get anything close would be a heck of a lot of money, right? So it is very much to your advantage to make your own stuff. I do want to embellish these at some point in some way. I don't have a well-developed concept of what that will be. So if you have any ideas what you think I might want to do, no promises that I'll take every idea, but feel free to chime in the comments section. And either way, I hope that you'll join us here next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.